Hello, my friends. Welcome to Your Seat at the Table, and this is Rick. This is a beautiful Sunday morning. It's a little bit overcast out there, but not too bad. I also just had one of the stray kittens out there trying to climb the screen window. She's not doing it. She's not doing it at the moment, so hopefully that won't cause some background noises and stuff. We are looking at Star Wars Platt's Starport Guide. This is one of the books that I have read and got lots of great ideas for locations in Star Wars campaigns over the years. It also gives me a lot of information and stuff that I've utilized in my own attempts at creating a game, which if you go back far enough in my channel, you can find stuff on my would-be Stellar Frontiers game system that's still in limbo and probably will be for many years yet to come for a number of reasons. One of the other things is that this particular book has, like a lot of these books that are created, the creators never really envisioned that these things would still be around 20 years, 30 years after the manufacture. So the material is not necessarily, the binding sometimes are dodgy. Material is bad about that. A lot of FASA books, the older stuff, will have a tendency to come unglued at the spine real easy, but other issues can cause problems. In this case, you can see that the pages are coming, they're split and some aspects completely individual. There's also lots of use damage and stuff like that, the dog-eared and edged up and things like this. I also spilled something on it at some point. I'm not sure what. Another bad habit of mine back in the day was I used to like to read back before you had your cell phone and you had that with you at all times, and access to the internet and all that other wonderful stuff that comes with our new technology. We used to carry things with us called books, and I would have a half dozen of these things or of different types in my vehicles over the years, and sometimes they would get in the window and sit there and get baked by the wind, get moisture damage or the sun, etc., or they would lay in the back seat and get stuff piled on them. I wasn't being At the time, I wasn't considering, longevity of them, just usability. So I would take these with me as reading material when I needed to. I was stuck at a light someplace for any length of time, or in a parking lot waiting on something or somebody, or etc. If I went out for something to eat, I was real bad about that too. First many years of my early marriage, we would go out to dinner and I would read a book while we were waiting for the stuff to come, and because I was pretty selfish and stupid and wasn't as wise as I like to think I've learned over the years. Anyhow, because of this, I've started taking these books and when I store them in a big plastic bag. This is to help keep them from their pages from migrating out and becoming completely lost. Anyway, West End Games Platt Starport Guide. So, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, some people worry about the civil war between the Empire and the Rebel Alliance, and then there are free traders or smugglers who are in the middle and like it that way. We're entrepreneurs, that's another word I can't pronounce, and opportunists. We live the transient life wandering space lanes in search of trade, fortune, and a good deal. The closest we come to a home are the countless starports. They're filled with new clients and markets, contacts and starship services, and sometimes danger and intrigue. Turn the page and check it out. So what we have is this fictional character, Platt, who shares all of her information on some of these very obscure and some very large ports. So we got supplement for the role-playing game using the book, and we got a word from Platt Okeefe and her stats, game master information. So we have things like how to set up a starport, a note for repairs, and a few supplementary rules, repair rules summary, space travel regulations EU, spacefaring agencies, the Imperial Space Ministry, which you need to know, which you better know, the Bureau of Ships and Services, otherwise known as BOSS, one of the few Old Republic agencies to come forward or come through the imperial times with very little changes, in part because BOSS is very close-knit. It says here, most of the positions are filled through hereditary means. Bosses as much a star-spanning tribe as a civil bureaucracy, which is why even the Empire doesn't mess with them that much. So Imperial Navy, Imperial Customs, says while Boss keeps track of spacefaring vessels, Imperial Navy and Imperial Customs enforce Imperial law, spacefaring ordinances. So you know, here's information on having your ship's operating license, captain's accredited license, and arms loadout permit. So non-military starships weapons are unusually high shield ratings require an arms loadout permit. If you don't have all your paperwork and your ducks in a row, this can get you into lots of problems with the Empire and customs inspections and things like this. There is one of the old Star Wars novels from the Han Solo's the first trilogy for Han Solo, and it's either Han Solo's Revenge or I can't think of the other one in the series. But in the beginning, very beginning of it, Han and Chewie spent an awful lot of money to get a slicer to give them a legitimate but fake licenses for both the ship. It was now licensed, only back when it was licensed to the Starbearer franchise. And Captain Han Solo had a new accredited captain's license, and they had, most importantly, as part of the deal they got for doing some shady stuff, was an official loadout permit for operating in Star's End, I think was the other book, in the corporate sector authority, and this allowed Han and Chewbacca to go do a lot of stuff and be legit if they get pulled over by the local enforcement, which is, you know, part of doing business is being a smuggler or so on and so forth. So getting around Boss, getting where, so defining locations like landing field, limited services, standard class, stellar class, imperial class, starports. Getting there. The METSOP is the standard message for spacers, a comm channel. Most starports reserved for general notices regarding spaceship or traffic patterns, conditions, and other factors that the captain should be aware of. Arrival procedures, some sample METSOPs. So message to spacers approaching Raltier. An Imperial blockade is being enforced in the system. No commercial starships have clearance to approach the planet. Ships to find this blockade will be engaged and destroyed by Imperial naval vessels. Starships requiring starport surfaces before jumping to an alternate destination should tune into comm channel IX-142. Services are available from outer perimeter Imperial picket ships, vessels, etc., etc., and so on. So the partying posture, procedures, getting caught. Empire can be a fairly strict organization, especially when perspective those of us involved in the shadier side of business. Imperial penal references, etc. So we got all our information on Class 1 infraction, Class 2, Class 3, Class 4, and Class 5 infractions. So we go on to the first of the supplements. Port Haven. Spacers come to a Port Haven to enjoy the sun and surf. Oh yeah, it's also a good place to go to avoid Imperial entanglement. So this is a literal tiny isolated settlement on a backwater, very little travel to world, and it with only 2 permanent inhabitants. The rest are whomever happens to be in at the haven at the time, and there's very little way of services to be had, so you better bring your own supplies and material, and if you need repairs, you might be AOL or SOL, excuse me. So we got the one little place that passes for a pub, and with its resident Master Mixel, and the other resident Halmar, who is this big game hunter, quote, retired, who basically keeps all the really bad, nasty beasts away from the haven itself. So we've got stats on those individuals. You can see how the haven itself really isn't a whole lot. Most of the buildings are abandoned and are temporarily claimed by whomever happens to be in the port at the time. Setting up home, Port Haven itself, you can see once again, not a lot going on there. And except customs, which there aren't any, commodities, which there really aren't any. Haven's water, the bar. Technical hangar, which is basically a lesser extent a big building with a bunch of junk in it that, you know, ideally if you do repairs on your ship, you discard your stuff you don't use, you can't use, or broken, and you throw it in this hangar, or directly around outside it, and maybe the next port SOB that comes along and needs something can scavenge a piece off of something you didn't need, and so on. So, right, havens, fresh water, things that growl in the night. They emphasize over and over again: don't go out in the jungle. It's pretty full of nasty beastie. Then we got some adventure outlines here for an adventure there. Then we just move on to Kuwait, the gateway to the core and a military shipyard to boot. Kuwait is not the place to screw around. Very difficult to get in and out of, and you better have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, or you're going to probably not get out of it. Kuwait passenger and cargo ports, Kuwait itself, staging systems. So to get to Kuwait, Kuwait is such a busy system with so much traffic that you go to a neighboring star system to queue up to jump in or out of. So they got 3 places where you jump in and 3 places where you exit from, and then from there you can transit to wherever you're going. So you can talk about their staging systems, the inner Kuwait transfer zone, huge mega space station that is the cargo and passenger port for the public. It says here, amendum. Docking fees at Kuwait passenger port vary depending on the class of starship you're flying, like freighters docking to passenger or cargo port expect to pay about 150 credits per day, while immense passenger liners like Quarry Princess or large container ships can expect upwards of 2,000 credits a day or more. Keep in mind that they also point out that there's not a lot of small cargo availability for independents. Mostly you're going to be bringing people or picking up people and transferring them out. If you are bringing something in that's going to be extremely, probably illegal, because that's the only way they can sneak it in, and you have to deal with all that in bales. So we got some nice artwork and possibly, some sites and things and stuff you can run into. And we got ship's operating license, captain's accredited license, loadout permits, cargo bay taxes, ship's transport. It says obtaining official clearance to travel into the core worlds can be a hassle for free traders, because profits can be big. Plus, it doesn't help much if you're caught jumping about the core worlds without proper clearance. So, if you want to go to Coruscant, it's not just as simple as they make it look like in the movies. You don't just go from Tatooine to Coruscant without proper paperwork. You can, but you put yourself at great risk of being incarcerated. Kuwait passenger port itself, more information on it in detail. You can see my pages are still disintegrating. The maps, core dome, military dome, outbound dome, Kuwait dome, spacers you can meet, Sergeant Regis Thine, Captain Dory, Benny, basically a lugger of cargo for you. Starport domes, customs, Kuwait freight port, Kuwait system, Imperial transfer post. Then we got some adventures, dealing with some tourists, ISB agent, customs. Moves on to Gelgelar Free Port. It's a cold, muddy, and miserable. It's always safe hideaway, and at beast being hauled in by an Imperial customs ship any day. So Gelgelar Free Port is the only city and starship facility on the swamp planet Gelgelar, built on a dry hill in the middle of swamps, blah, blah. It's run and operated by a bunch of Celestians, Sullust. So Laurel Eccles is the head dude, unofficial mayor. They also, when they can make a point of this, they keep their landing beacon off until you jump in the system, you approach the planet, and you send out a broadcast requesting landing instructions. So unless you've been here and you've got it in your own database exactly where this port is, they will respond to you in Sullust, and they only speak in Sullust. This helps them to whittle out Imperial entanglements, so to speak. It can cause you some problems if you don't speak Sullust. Other docking platforms and landing, some notable characters. So this is an example. This fellow's like talking, the Wookiee's wanting clearance, and this guy's talking Sullust, and they can't communicate. So some other interesting yahoos that you might meet at the place while you're there, or run into, much to your delight or chagrin. So customs, commodities, bolus mold, And there's a swamp gas, yeah, Chivas gas, which is like another type of gas usable in blasters. So this is their two primary exports. There is an overview of the haven itself, outfitters, slippery eel, Red's boarding house, points of interest, few adventures. That leads us to Omze's incredible traveling starport. And I have to admit that I love this one to death. I really love the concept of it. And if you're familiar with some of the later X-Wing novels, I think the series from the X-Wing, there is, I'm dropping the name up the top of my head. I know his name, I just can't put my finger on it. Booster Terek. Booster Terek gets his hands on a Star Destroyer, and he manages to convince the New Republic to let him keep it. So he paints it a bright red because red was really cheap, and he had a hole full of it or something. And it's heavily under-modified. New Republic strips the majority of its weaponry off, and some of its shielding off to make it not usable as a Star Destroyer. But Booster Terek turns it into a flying starport and trade post, which is kind of a much bigger version of what's going on this particular ship. So the Stradling is this big old cruiser that's converted by this guy named Omze into a traveling port. So it has all the port services and trade goods. It also got all kinds of services available and places to spend your money, bars and things like this available, and some of them are, a lot of them are nefarious in nature. You want to get your boss stuff updated, there's a guy to see right there. Here's the enforcers that keep quote the police on board to keep everybody in line. Other key thing to note is pretty much the entire crew and most permanent, semi-permanent passengers, residents on board are alien, and none of them are human friendly. It is not a human friendly location. Go in there with a human arrogance, you're likely to end up dead. Dead or worse. Keep that in mind. But when I was creating some one of my earliest novels and stuff, had a character who had Kai's incredible flying starport, which basically was I hate to say it, a plagiarized, brought out complete stolen idea from this particular supplement. The Broadside Club, Broadside himself, the big Wookiee who runs the bar, Venture Ideas, Customs, the Chuck, the Rhodian mercenary captain who's in charge of the security, Commodities, Services, Repair Bays, Data Works Central, General Quarters, get all your equipment and general other stuff taken care of. This is basically a tavern or an inn or hotel to stay in while you're on board. Get your slicing and data work dealt with, etc. Starboard Broadside Club. Yeah, I plagiarized that one too. Venturing out for various adventures dealing with the place. Great. Byblos Starport Tower 214. Free traders do have a place in this bustling system. 164 billion people. Tire markets fall through the cracks. So, Byblos is a high population world in the colonies, requires massive imports of raw material, luxury items, and foodstuffs. One major city is made up of hundreds of immense city towers rising 1,000 meters in the sky. Within the city are several starport towers, and this is one of them. So all the stuff that would go with that, and works for another example of a heavily populated world that's just not directly in the core, but the idea is still there with all the bells and whistles that go, and all the potential for problems that can also go while dealing with it. If the custom officer brings a stormtrooper on board, you're in for a long night, or several. Alright. Typical hangar, approach vectors from getting in and out of the city, customs, some key NPCs, typical docking hangar. Alien slave laws, Bureau of Customs Office, commodities, imports, exports, illegal goods, services, repair bays, venture ideas, other starport services, points of interest, Yeah, I know. I kind of, when I do these things, I kind of buzz through, but we're just doing an overview of what's going on in these supplements. Who knows, years from now, or when I burn through all my collection of other stuff, I might come back on some of these and do much more in-depth and thus lengthier videos. I'm trying to keep these videos short because I know that the long ones, most people's suspension pans are not very long. And unless you're like me, I spend a lot of time, my job has me driving between customers, and I'll either sit somewhere and wait for a customer or wait for the time to be, because at a certain time, scheduled times is what they want. Or it might involve several hours of drive time between where I'm at and the next place. And this is a great time for me. I pull up these podcasts and videos like this, and I'll listen to them, when I'm just, because I get tired of listening to the radio all the time. I'm grateful to have the radio, because trust me, the old truck didn't have a radio at all, and it really made for some very long days and nights on occasion. So we got Darknon Station. Long ago, when hyperdrive was relatively new and hyperspace travel was a bold and risky way to link the galaxy, navigational beacons help space travel between the stars. These beacons mark reliable jump routes and along coordinates along frequent routes, allowing safe travel. Space stations all grew up around these nav beacons. So this is basically one of these ancient nav beacon space stations that's disintegrating and falling apart, but makes for a great, place for holding up and dealing with stuff. So you get to cranking the old Rexus, who kind of runs things. Tanader and his Galaxy shop. The ever helpful Sergeant Nellis. Nethus, Darkanon's Concourse, kind of a fixer-upper, Yeah, it looks like a station's on its last leg kind of place. The repair bay is more than a junk museum. So we got customs, such that it is. Well, Rexus really doesn't like to be bothered. Kind of a weird hermit. Leave him alone. Commodity services, the repair bay, the Galaxy shop, the hotel, lounge, points of interest, the beacon itself, the nebula that's the beacon is marking. And we got Kulan. Remember that no matter how often you visit Kulan, you will always be just a guest. So this is on Ryloth, and one of the free ports on Ryloth, basically. And some of the interesting Twi'lek characters and nether dwellers that you can run into, services, commodities, protocol and gifts, i.e. be ready to be bribing everybody. A little bit of grease, a little bit of fragrant grease goes a long way, my friends. If you don't know what fragrant grease is, Google it. Go on Starport on Ryloth. The kitchen, Mala's kitchen services. A few stories, the junkyard, i.e. repairs bay, procession, some adventures, so on and so forth. So this is Platt's Starport Guide. It's a great book, and if you can get your hands on a copy of this be great. A PDF, you're into PDFs, this will also be great. Lots of good ideas and stuff. I don't know if they've ever reproduced it, if there's a later version of it, which I don't know. I know that West End went belly up, so if Wedge isn't doing it, the new companies that are doing Star Wars may or may not have tapped it, or maybe they're not able to. I don't know, but it is an awesome thing, in my opinion, as a Star Wars enthusiast goes, just for the read alone and the backstories and all that other stuff to go with it. Till next time, this is Rick.